With a focus on raising academic standards, Castlevale School in Birmingham hasn't seen the relevance of the environmental agenda to them, until now that is. We've challenged the school to see how green they can go in just one term. We brought in energy expert Ken Heaton, who identified where big savings could be made.
Today I'm very much focused on the quick wins. We're all very busy people and we've got to face it and we've got to plan it and we've got to target it and we've got to be successful at this.
But asking teachers to do more during the busiest term of the year can prove difficult.
Some forms have had their green champions for 2 weeks now and they're just sitting there doing nothing whilst we wait for the few form tutors to nominate theirs.
So will the arrival of Ken's energy report jolt the school into action?
It's really quite shocking, some of it.
In this second programme in the series, Ken returns to Castlevale to set head teacher Clive Owen some energy-saving targets.
This is where we need to be for November and December and for the rest of the financial year, and if you achieve them, we're going to save 10% by the end of the year.
Fantastic.
We'll see whether the school's successful in its efforts to implement Ken's advice.
We have to take at least 1 metre reading per week. If we don't, you're blind. You don't know what's going on.
The leadership team discuss where best to invest in energy-saving measures.
Light sensors in the classrooms. Price for that is about £100 per classroom.
To save £100 per classroom though if the teachers would turn their own
lights off. Indeed, yeah.
But if Castlevale are going to succeed, a lot will depend on whether teachers are prepared to change their ways.
My light switches are on the wrong side of the room. I'm too lazy to go and turn them off.
To encourage staff to do better, NQT and leader of the Green Team, Jordan Kelly, decides to name and shame teachers who leave their lights on when they leave the classroom.
This is Mr. Cleverly. I'd like just to explain why you've left your lights on in your classroom at break time.
Sorry about that, sir.
Right.
I'll go and turn them off straight away now.
I would if I was you.
Thank you. Very sorry. He's absolutely right.
You consider yourself named and shamed?
Definitely, definitely. I feel very bad now. Would you like to explain why you've left your lights on in your room?
Because I've only been gone for 2 minutes. That's why. And now I'm going to the staff room to drop my cup and I'll be about approximately another minute. And then I'm back.
So you're going to leave your lights on for another minute?
Is that okay? Yes, I am.
That's not quite how it's supposed to work, Miss Higgs.
Well, obviously, some teachers are still being a little bit better than others with switching lights off. It's about 50-50 now. At the end of the day, is really good. There's a lot of lights going off at the end of the day. It's just the short times, like lunchtime, break time. Teachers just nip off for a cup of coffee, think they'll be back in a minute, and they're not back for half an hour because they end up talking to someone. It's those small things that we need to really sort of knuckle down on. Obviously, I can get away with saying some things with certain teachers that I wouldn't say to others. So the guys I'm more friendly with are probably getting hassled a lot more than some of the teachers I don't know quite as well.
Do I have to turn them off?
Yep. No, no one's in here, and the TV monitor's on. That's off, and the lights are now off. Mr. Nicol, your lights are on in your room, so we've turned them off for you, and your TV monitor.
I was going to use it in a minute.
Yeah, but you're sort of wasting electricity.
I'll make sure I do it next time for you boys.
Well then,
Sorry.
thank you. See ya.
That's one teacher collared. Now, who's left their lights on? Ah, Mrs. Cooney, the science teacher.
That we'll have to have a word with her.
These lights are on, but the door's locked.
Mr. Ken, we'll have to tell him about that then.
Oh dear, Miss Higgs is at it again.
Unfortunately, Miss Higgs hasn't learnt her lesson. And if you look in, she's still actually got her lights on. Is her computer on as well? Yeah, I think her computer's on as well.
I actually think there's a conspiracy going on, to be honest. And I think that Jordan and Tom are out to get me. I distinctly remember going off for duty and switching the lights off, and I think Tom next door popped them back on again.
Jordan knows Kerry Cooney very well. She's in the lab next door to his, and she's always leaving her lights on.
Major problem I find with turning my lights off is the fact that my light switches are on the wrong side of the room compared to my doors. So quite often you'll come in and I'll have turned one strip of lights off, but the other three will still be on because I have to walk all the way across the classroom to turn them off. So in the morning I'm sitting in mainly a dark room because I'm too lazy to walk over to the light switches to turn them on. But at the end of the day, I'm also too lazy to go and turn them off.
A pretty poor excuse, Mrs. Cooney. Things are going to have to change because Ken Heaton's energy report has just been emailed to Jordan. Ken's identified 7 quick wins, zero-cost ideas for the green team to implement. They'll save cash and help reduce CO2 emissions. The report makes rather painful reading.
It's really quite shocking, some of it. Simple things like turning off moving screensavers for the computers, and this is obviously a rough estimate, but it's saving over £4,000 a year. If you add that on to switching lights off at lunchtime, checking air conditioning units, printers off rather than on standby or energy save, photocopiers off rather than on standby or energy save, work themselves out to be over £9,000 in savings a year, and also 49 tonnes of carbon dioxide, which is a massive amount.
The survey report is full of ideas for saving money. Improving light switch discipline. Installing reflective panels behind radiators to reduce heat loss through uninsulated walls. Fitting thermostatic valves on radiators and lagging pipes and stopcocks in the boiler room. A few simple steps that Ken reckons could help Castlevale save £10,000 a year. It's 6:30 a.m. Clive Owen's up early to plan the school's response to Ken's report. The next 2 days are going to be crucial. Ken's back tomorrow expecting to see progress, so today Clive's convening a finance summit to look at spending options.
Well, we've got a team together today which is going to look at those mid-term things. What could we do in terms of things like radiator valves, in terms like reflectors, insulation, saving water, all those kind of things which will require initially, I guess, a little bit of capital investment. But with that little bit of investment will hopefully bring us back the returns over the next couple of years or so.
He's determined to ensure he keeps driving the process forward. Another important event today. A shiny new blue skip for recycled paper arrives. It's being provided free by a local company, and Birmingham City Council have agreed to pick up the tab for collecting the paper.
Castlevale School's making a great contribution, I think. It's great to see children getting involved in recycling, and if us providing them with a skip helps, then we're very pleased.
In the last few weeks, paper's been mounting up as staff and students are getting the message to recycle. Jordan Kelly's Green Champions, hand-picked from every tutor group, take responsibility for collecting the day's waste paper and taking it out to the skip. Teaching assistant, parent and Green Team member Sue Perks is doing her bit too, collecting paper from the stash in the staff room.
So it's working then, the old recycling?
Yeah, it's hard work.
Yeah.
It's remembering to bring things down, but staff are putting things in the staff room recycling bin. Not emptying it. You have to keep saying to them now and then, don't forget to empty your bins.
They'll be named and shamed if they're not careful. The finance meeting's underway. Martin, the site manager, and Lorraine, the bursar, join Clive and Jordan to plan for the return of our energy expert.
As you know, we've got Ken rejoining us tomorrow, and I think he's going to be a hard taskmaster. He'll be wanting to know in quite a rigorous way what we've done, what we're going to do, what we're planning to do in the next few months.
There's several areas really. I mean, when you come to think that energy is 3% of our school budget each year, I think if we can save even $5,000 a year, I mean, it's a massive saving.
That's
it means
right,
that we
yeah.
can actually put it to good use.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not just a one-off, it's year on year then. We've got all these
That's
savings
right, yeah.
going on. I mean, one of the big things that we've talked about in the past is doing something with the heating.
The biggest problem on the heating is once you come into the school, it's all the radiators.
Right.
It's not a zone system, you know, so if we've got a cold spot in the school, we can't focus the heat on that. And if we've got a hot spot, we can't cool that down.
Right.
It's either all or nothing.
Is the possible alternative that we consider radiator valves on an individual basis?
That would help. It would give each of the members of staff a little bit of control in their room, you know, that if it was too hot, they could turn it off. And it would also help offset, you know, the parts of the school where it's still cold and they want them on.
Right.
Well, Lorraine, have we got some money we could put to that if we wanted to go ahead and do some work around that?
I think so. I mean, looking at it in the long term and not in the short term, I think it's got to be a good saving. It's got to be something we should go for.
The insulation behind them.
Yeah, the reflectors.
Yeah, which
They do work well.
work
those.
really, really
yes,
well.
Yes, they do.
And cost for 80 radiators, 1,600, and the savings of nearly £3,000 a year. So,
what if we can regulate them?
That's right.
That will actually become far more important, won't it?
That's right.
Because we want to keep in the heat we've got then.
That's it.
So that could be really valuable.
Yep.
Looking at number 12 in Ken's report, the issue of the convector heaters. How many of these have we got around the building? Do you know?
I think there's probably about 10 to a dozen. They're usually secreted away in offices, you know. But I mean, I find that once we issue one, we never get it back.
Yeah. Yes. But there are some, aren't there?
There are definitely some, yeah.
I mean, could we do a search?
Yeah.
And try and quietly, perhaps when somebody's on the evening shift, and remove them discreetly. And if we keep them in the storeroom for when people need them, if there's a genuine problem with heating, we can issue them back out, can't we? But I think what Ken suggests is, if they're there, people will use them.
And they are very expensive to run.
Yeah.
Can I just add two for consideration? The one is push taps in the toilets. Some of the toilets, we've already got them in, but it'd be, again, depending on quantity, £30 to £40 per tap.
Particularly in student toilets. I think that would be well worth doing.
Yeah, staff toilets isn't so...
children are the ones who are sloppy about leaving them on.
Yeah.
And the other one, we were talking briefly previously about light sensors in the classrooms.
Oh, yes.
And the price for that is about £100 per classroom. And obviously, you know, we don't have to worry about, you know, people turning lights off then. They just go off automatically.
Yeah, a nice way to save £100 per classroom, though, if the teachers would turn their own
lights off. Indeed, yes.
That's it, yeah.
No, very good point, Jordan.
Because that's quite expensive, really, isn't it, overall?
I would imagine it would take a while to get your money back on that.
Yeah, I would have thought.
I would have thought so. Yeah. So we've got 3 or 4 things we can go ahead and get moving on, really, in the near future, really.
Castlevale have invested some money in the fabric of the building. Some of the laboratories have been totally refurbished. Great for teaching and learning, not so hot on energy conservation.
All the radiators are nicely blocked in, nice metal gauzes on the top to let the heat out, but there is no way of getting into the radiators to change the temperature. So it being such a big classroom, it's freezing cold in the morning because all the heat nicely gets trapped inside the cupboards. Then as the day goes on, they leave the heating on the whole school. And you can't turn your radiators off. So it starts to turn into an absolute sauna. So you open the windows and the heat goes straight out the windows because all the vents are actually positioned underneath each of the windows. And the kids insist on putting the fans on even in the middle of winter because it gets so hot in here. So you've got no way of controlling the temperature without wasting a ton of energy.
Jordan's been given cover so he can go on a fact-finding trip to a school in Warwick. Myton School has earned an Eco School Green Flag Award after deciding to go greener 3 years ago. He's come to listen and learn from his counterpart, who's another young science teacher.